Welcome, everyone, in our listening audience. Today we're talking with Jay Richardson. He's a senior business consultant and has an extensive career in the consulting industry. Both Jay and I worked for a large Chicago consulting firm for several years and became acquainted when we began our own firms and went out on our own. He has several decades of working in many industries, and his expertise includes executive coaching, strategic planning, change management, management consulting, business consulting, training, leadership development, public speaking, and corporate training. So, Jay, welcome. How you been?
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you. I know we haven't connected in a while, so um, things are going great. The best thing I can say is I love life. You got an amazing girlfriend by my side. I love with all my heart, and business is good, and things are going right in the right direction. So I'm pleased.
That's that's excellent. We had a little bit of a challenge here with the hurricanes. Fortunately, all the family is safe. Uh, we did
That's
lose my sailboat of 23 years. I had the unfortunate choice of putting it in Sarasota, Florida over Labor Day, and it was parked there at the sailing squadron, and of course, Sarasota took a direct hit. So we're praying for a lot of
wow.
people. You can't imagine the devastation down there until you go down and see it. 10 miles of people's possessions and things on the side of the road, from mattresses to appliances and sheetrock and carpet. It's
Yeah,
pretty devastating. But anyway,
just can't
today we
imagine.
want to
Yeah.
talk about your career. I mean, you've had a
Yeah.
very successful career. So tell our audience how you got started on that path and what led you into this.
For me, it really just kind of fell into my lap. Wasn't something I was actively pursuing to be a consultant, per se.
Hmm.
But I was at a place in my career where I had just parted with another company that was going down a path that I didn't think was very favorable, and you know, I I believe that God gave me the ability to kind of see things at a 20,000 foot level. I can see holes
Hmm.
where there's issues and problems that may come up, and I mean, one of the reasons they hired me was because of that ability
Yeah.
that I shared in the interview. But when push came to shove, I'm trying to share, hey, there's some things that the direction you're going is not very favorable, and I think it's going to hurt you. And they wouldn't listen to any kind of logical reason. But after that, we amicably parted ways, and needless to say, I submitted my resume. And honestly, I don't, the firm, the consulting firm that you and I joined, I didn't actually apply. That I don't remember, but they somehow connected with me, and I think it was God's divine, because from that, I came into an industry that was phenomenal, and everything I had done in the past, from many different industries, I developed and was training in certain areas and disciplines, and they took all of that, honed that skill, focused my attention in a specific area to help small businesses, and it just kind of took off from there. I've been, a I've increased my ability as a consultant to help clients along the way, and they really
Hmm.
help define what that really looked like for me.
Yep. Interestingly, when I got the same nod and invitation to go up to their boot camp for 10 days, and I know you
Yeah,
survived the boot camp because you got out,
yeah,
but we had 21 people start, and only 11 people finished that 10-day boot camp. And
yeah,
immediately they sent you out on a job right from,
yeah.
you graduate and you're at the airport. A file would show up in your phone or in your computer, and you'd get the case and you'd be on the job at 7:30 the next morning. And
Yeah.
I think you're right. My consulting, probably the first 10 years, was what I call a little swampy. I mean, I live in Orlando, and in Florida, there's a lot of swamp, and there's a lot of life in the swamp. However,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't really sense a direction of where the water is going, and it certainly
right.
doesn't drive anything. The consulting disciplines that we learned in sales, operations, finance, and cash, managing that cash, really integrated all of those things together for me, and I think for you as
Yeah,
well, uh,
yeah,
to be able to really serve our clients well. So it's a lot more like the Colorado River with a hydroelectric dam that drives electricity that you can measure than
Right.
some of the earlier days. So,
Yep.
but how do you be so successful as a consultant?
I, quite honestly, it's well, there's a few things. It's if one, you've got to build lasting, deep friendships and relationships with your clients. If you're just thinking of them as a number, then it's not going to work. You know,
Right.
it's, it's how many more clients can you add to your docket and keep going down the line. No, it's building deep, long-lasting relationships that really help to foster that change. And then the second is to teach them and mentor them on how to do the same thing that you do, basically turning them into the consultants for their own industry, for their own
Right.
company. Yeah, and you know, you get those that go in there, consultants will go in there typically, and it's all about, you know, quid pro quo. It's here's, I did for you, I did all these things, I fixed all these things, now pay me my money, and it's like, that's not really how it should work. I go in to teach them how to do things, how to search for where they're hemorrhaging money, how to fix the issues in their expenses, and how to rebuild culture. You do all that so that they don't need me again, unless for something new.
I,
If they need me, they need to tweak, but that's it, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And then the last part is really follow up. If I truly believe that I'm there to support and help my clients reach a goal, then I should be checking in with them. I want to make sure that they're on track, and if they're not,
yeah,
how can we course correct? How can we tweak? And a lot of times we see in the industry where, okay, you know, we're done with the project. We'll see you next year and see how you're doing. And then 12 months comes down and they, oh, sorry, you didn't really follow some of the plans, so we're going to have to redo this. And oh, by the way, our rates have increased. You know, so
yeah.
it's being successful is to really build that deep relationships and make sure they're on track to hit the goals that they've already aligned for
That
themselves.
that makes great sense, and what you're describing is more than billable hours. And I know you've had this conversation, and I have, with lots of
Yeah.
clients and over 50 different engagements in all kinds of industries. But you know, you're there for about the fourth week or fifth week. You really got traction. They respect you, and they know you understand the operation well. You're
Yeah.
increasing the sales through the velocity of the pipeline. Operations is eliminating rework, which is really costly, not just having to do it, but the opportunity cost of what they could be doing if they didn't have to go back and fix things. So,
Right.
and so we ask the owner sometimes, and I know this is a really arrogant question, but you've asked it and I have too, and we say, I've been here 4 weeks. Do you believe that I have the skill set to run your company and could run
Yeah.
your company as CEO? And they look and go, oh yeah, you know, with
Yeah.
your background and experience, yeah. And I said, well, first of all, that's a very arrogant statement on our part, yours and mine. But
Right.
secondarily, it's totally irrelevant because
Right.
it doesn't matter if I know how to run your company. We need to know that you and your senior team can run the company. That's
Yeah.
what's most important. So it goes beyond the billable hours. It's helping create that cohesive team and getting the people all aligned, going in the same direction with metrics and measurement, and it's proved by cash, isn't it? So, hey, you've worked
Yeah.
for a lot and seen a lot of excellent leaders over the years. What are some of the qualities and attributes that you've most admired and tried to emulate?
I That's a great question. I mean, you go to the internet and you type in what makes a great leader, and you got 12 points here and 8 points there, or whatever. For me, it's been the 4 C's, is what I call the 4 C's. It's communication, it's culture, it's commitment, and it's calibration. You know, if you're not a great communicator, you're not willing to communicate, you're not open to the conversations for
Sure.
good feedback, providing feedback, receiving feedback, then it all breaks down because nobody's talking, nobody's on the right page together. Culture is imperative. You know, I'll tell a quick story. Years and years ago, I used to work for Starbucks, and whether you like Howard Schultz's politics or whatever they're doing nowadays, they had a very good culture. It was based on taking care of their employees. Employees took care of the customers, and customers took care of the business. And they put it specifically in that order. And any time they flip-flopped that to focus on business first or customers first, it all broke down. So creating the culture that allows your employees to thrive in, to expand, to grow, to learn more, and to provide an environment where they're presenting legendary service and wow and experience to their customers or clients or patients for that matter, then the patients and the customers and the clients, they want to come back, but the employees want to stay there. But calibration, it's for myself, learning, growing, understanding. It's being curious and open myself up to new ways and new ideas, but course correcting. If things are off kilter or off path, how do I get back? It's constantly evaluating and recalibrating myself to make sure I'm on track. But then it's the commitment that they make to not only their own personal development, but the development of the people around them, so that if they're doing all those things, putting that effort and that commitment to their goal and to the expectations they have for everybody else grows around them. And it's
so what you're describing is that leaders, especially business leaders, business owners, CEOs, one of the key components of leadership, it sounds, is what you're saying, is replication, is creating not just followers, but to create other leaders so they can lead in finance. They can take the lead in sales and sometimes go farther than the owner would ever be able to take it, because they're good at what they do and create more leaders.
Well, and you know this too, Don, that our success in the consulting industry is to do exactly that. These business owners, they get into business, they don't have a clue. They know how to do their industry, technique. They know how to put a roof on a house. They know how to build a construction site. They know how to sell hotel space. They know how to do all those things. But what they don't know how to do is manage the business and work on the business so that the business continues to grow and succeed and do more. And so what we are doing as consultants, we're going into creating just what you said is we're replicating the ability to work on the business and create leaders out of the ownership that they don't know how to do that. So it's imperative that we know how to, as consultants, we know how to do that for others.
Nobody gets a pass. Life is up and down and things. Are you willing to share maybe a crisis point in your career or a challenge you faced and how you faced it and what was the outcome?
Sure. So I could share many, but one of the biggest crisis points for me, quite honestly, was working for a larger corporation, and that didn't really share my viewpoint, didn't share my philosophy, didn't share my spirituality or my faith in God, and it's hard when you start going up the ladder and up the chain, you start seeing more where it just doesn't line up. And I personally had a crisis of faith where do I want to continue down this path with this particular company and do what's necessary to still further my own career, but I'm really furthering theirs. And I decided at that point, I went on vacation, came back on that Saturday. By Sunday night, I had business license already started. I had a website created. I had phone numbers. I had everything to create my own business. And Monday morning, I called them and said, I'm out. Because I just believed that not that I was better than them or not that I could do better for my clients, but that our philosophies just didn't line up. So I made the conscious choice to do that. The unfortunate part of that was it was 1 week before COVID hit. So now I gotta really find out how to maneuver and navigate through this now worldwide pandemic where everything is shut down. I was fortunate enough to have built relationships with some of my past clients, and one of them called me and said, "Hey, we need some help through this. We are growing through the pandemic. There was electrical contractors, and so we need really some help rebuilding some of our leadership team. We've changed people and promoted some, and so we need you to come in and help." So I was down in San Antonio. I was stuck in San Antonio, but I was down in San Antonio for 6 months during the pandemic, in supporting and helping them. So I stayed working, but I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't built that relationship.
Yeah.
They would have just found somebody else, done whatever. But because I had that connection with somebody, they felt the openness to call me and say, "Hey, we need some help. Let's go."
Yeah. So how did your faith impact those setbacks in that time?
Faith is a hard thing to describe to somebody. I grew up or raised 7 kids, and those who know me personally know that I've got 7 kids, but a lot of people don't. And but faith has always been a huge factor in our lives. We relied on God a lot. I look back and see how much He has done for us. I was the only one working. We homeschooled our kids. My wife had 4 degrees and could have gone out and gotten a better job than me at some point, but we made the conscious choice that she's going to stay home, raise the kids, teach the kids to make them better for society when they get to be adults. And so, at times we struggled, but I look back and see we always had a roof over our head. We always had money to feed the kids. We always had this or that. We paid our bills. We didn't have any of those kind of issues. So when it comes to crises, I learned one very specific thing through my faith is that I can't change it. I can't change what happened.
Right.
I can't change whether or not the pandemic hit, or whether it was somebody's fault, or they did it on purpose, or it was by accident. I can't change any of that. So why cry over it? Why worry about it? Why even focus on that? What I got to focus on now is, what's my next step? What do I do for me?
Right.
What can I change for me that allows me to move forward? And is there a path that God has already shown me that allows me to move in that direction and to just go, just do it? I'm a very quick decision person, and I've always done that. I see the big picture. I see where the holes are, and I move around it, or I put things in place that I know are going to allow me to maneuver through the hole. But my faith allows me to not worry about what happened. I had the unfortunate part. 12 months later, after I started my business, my wife of 30 years passed away, 31 years. Oh. And
wow.
People wondered why I was able to move forward very quickly. I can't change the fact that she passed. All I can say is, now what's my life like now? What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? And faith helped me to realize that no matter what, there is somebody there that is going to take care of me no matter what, through the crisis, through the situation. So my faith was always a big part of where I go and what I do.
Wow. Just describe the ages of your kids today, just to give people a little perspective. How old are your kiddos today? You got 7, right?
I have 7. So I have to think about this a second, because they're every 2 years apart, and now they're in the odd years. So I think it's 30, 35, 33, 31, 31, 29, 26, and 25. So the last 2 are Irish twins, but I have twins in there, and then I have Irish twins that are 9 months apart. So
oh my, yeah. That's a lot of. That's a big family Thanksgiving, I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh! So then when you add my brother's kids and cousins and this. Yeah, it's 30, 40 strong every Thanksgiving.
Well, your faith has really sustained you through that, and raising all those kiddos and doing that in those years. I know there were difficult times and things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of your engagements. I know
Yeah.
you're pretty broad on things. In fact, I believe some of your consulting even involves dentistry. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about some of your consulting engagements, or some of the ones that you think went really particularly well,
Yeah.
and you made it making a difference.
Well, I'll give you one big example. That's probably my biggest success in his world anyway. Um, there's a gentleman who was struggling. He believed that he had to um, look beyond what his means were. It meaning he was started out as a landscaper, did it for a year, didn't like it, and then went into demolition and removal. Well, he had to have equipment, he had to have vehicles and a warehouse and all this, but he was only bringing in 150,000 a year, and he had to have two. He thought he had to have crews and this and office managers. So his expenses were outlandish. I mean, we're talking overhead factor. You and I know what overhead factor is. His was 135%,
Ooh,
and it was way bad.
yikes!
But that's what he thought he needed to do, and I only had a week with him, but in that week we dove deep into everything that he was doing and changed his behaviors. And there were times I didn't think he was listening. He had ADD, but when we would sit down and say, okay, it's lunchtime. What'd you learn in the morning? Because I'm not sure what he was listening. Boy, he would rattle off, man, every bit of what we taught him. And then in the end, at the end of the week, everything, the running joke in the office was, if Jay didn't say it, I'm not doing it. And one of the biggest parts of that was to change his behavior on how he bid out his projects. He would just go out there and, yeah, that's probably about 2,100. I'm like, that's all you do? Says, what about this and this and this and this? And start rattling off all these things. He's like, well, hopefully it should do it. I should be able to get some profit off of that. So I went back and compared and found out that he wasn't making profit at all. He was negative 5% at the end of the year. And part of that was because he had gotten some loans
Right.
to help pay for some of his equipment and et cetera. So it really wasn't making anything at all. It was bad.
Right.
At the end of the first year, we completely changed his whole way of bidding, and he was able to bring in, within 11 months, about $600,000 with a 15% profitability, because he had to pay back all his equipment, his
Right.
warehouse, all this stuff. And the second year, he made $200 shy of $1 million with 33% profitability. And from there, for the last couple of years, it's been nothing less than 30% profitability, and I think he's 1.2 million right now. So, but for him, it was a matter of changing his whole way of thinking. It was just a free float, whatever, because he was a young, immature kid,
Right.
and now he's a true business person, and looking at some point in the next 2 years or 2 to 5 years to sell his business, so he can go into other ventures to teach other people how to change their way of thinking,
Yeah.
and help them through things. So
Yeah,
that's been a great
that is
success.
so important. And you and I've talked about this a little bit with our latest venture with our software, with Kingdom Growth Engine. The software is made for consultants to be able to sit down in front of those business owners and quickly assess. It's always, and we know this from, it doesn't matter whether it's armed guard securities, it's freight forwarding, it's roofing, it's flooring, it's pest
Yeah.
control. It's always the same. It's always about sales, the acquisition of the client. You got to go get the work. And then
Yeah, yeah.
you have to figure out what moves them through that sales funnel and to get them through those gates to where you actually close the client or acquire the client or they buy or sign. And then when do you realize the revenue? So that's really important on the front side.
Yeah.
But then it quickly moves to operations, right? And then,
Yep.
the whole theory of constraints and find that
Getting
smallest
work
pipe.
done and yeah.
It's old school gold rat thinking, but it still applies. And then it
Yeah.
goes into finance. Audit the last 5 jobs, just like you did. And out of the last 5, you thought you were going to get X% margin. Did you? And if you didn't,
Right.
we get paid to be curious, like Ted
Yeah.
Lasso. You say, I
Yeah.
wonder why. Be curious, not judgmental, but just be
Right.
curious. I wonder why. We're not there to whack the people that maybe it's not working right or maybe they're slipping up. Maybe they weren't trained. But we train
Right.
them and we do, and then that equals the profit, etc. So I do remember a lot of those, and fortunately in COVID when that hit, all of my consulting dried up 100%. And I have some past client relationships, but they certainly weren't in the position or did not want to go back into consulting. And I got a call from a university that asked me to write a Bachelor of Science degree in hospitality. So I spent a year and a half creating 130 lectures on a green screen and writing all the curriculum for a bachelor's degree in hospitality. And then I reached back to my history and found 20, 30 of my colleagues that today are in very, very important positions, the president of Disney Travel or the managing director of Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines or the key revenue manager, sets ticket prices for all the universal parks around the world. That's a revenue manager. But I got to write all those courses, and that took me a year and a half, so that sustained me. So yes, God's just been there just at the right time, just in time, and sustained us. I have another question for you. What are some of the key skills or attributes or talents you'd advise somebody at whatever stage of the career they're in to focus on or to develop, wherever they are in their career, to equip them for today's changing marketplace? A lot of AI and a lot of things coming in. What's your advice?
That's a phenomenal question, because I don't think they really get that in school. I'm some MBAs that you and I have talked to over the years that just don't get it. It's all book smart and not practical. I think for me, some of the biggest things is you got to learn to communicate. You have to be able to interact, up, down, left, right, doesn't matter. In a big room or a small room, learn to communicate expectations, learn to communicate goals, and hold them accountable in some way. You need to learn the art of accountability. What does accountability really mean? And it's not, why did you do that? It's more depth than that. It is, if I ask you to do something, then that task is on my list. But if I say, when are you going to get it done? And you tell me, now you take ownership of it. So when it comes around to it and you didn't get it completed, well, then my question is that acceptable to you? It's not why. It's why did you do that? Okay, now go do this, 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 and this. No, there's no accountability there. Why doesn't matter. What are you going to do about it? Is that acceptable that you didn't get it done because you agreed to do it? And now what are you going to do about it? You push it back on them. The next is go ahead.
No, I just think that's amazing, because what happens a lot of times, especially if you're the type of leader that does have compassion and does care about your team, etc. When somebody comes to you and gets stuck, you've told them to go, do X or Y, and they get stuck, and they come back and say, I couldn't get this, I couldn't find the equipment, this piece or whatever, and so thinking you're being helpful, you say, well, let me look into it for you, and let me see what I can find. Well, they just handed you the monkey, and now it's on your back.
Exactly.
And being a good manager, that employee comes back to you in the afternoon and says, "Hey, did you find out where we could do that, or did you solve that?" And you go, "No, I had 2 meetings. I really haven't got to it yet."
Yep.
And of course, being a good manager, they're telling you, "Well, that's okay. Maybe we can circle back in the morning and see who's managing who." You see that a lot, don't you?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why when I went on my own, trying to determine how to name my business, and it had accountability in it. because that's where it all culminates down to, is accountability.
Right.
The other is more of growth, is developing your emotional intelligence and being, as you said about Ted Lasso, being curious and having a hunger to grow, to learn more. The more you know, the more you can impart to somebody else that doesn't know. And so having that hunger and that curiosity to find more, to learn more, be a sponge,
Yeah.
But the last, to me, has always been the most important in my career, is understanding the different personality profile types.
Yeah.
Whether it's DISC, whether it's Myers-Briggs, whatever that looks like
Strength
for you,
finders,
go
yeah,
learn.
any of the instruments, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Because you need two things. You need to know how who you are, how I like to receive things, how I like to give things, but you also need to know the same for them.
Right.
And once you understand that, then it's an easier conversation. And I'll tell you, a big way that makes a difference here, working in the dental industry. Some of the dentists are prima donnas, and just like any other medical profession, really. But I have one that's a very dominant personality. When he came into this, it was, when I first met him, you shouldn't be crying. I don't care why if you want to cry, you want to have drama issues, go do that at home, or stop your crying and take care of patients first, and cry when you're done later. It was just like, so, we had a dental assistant who got a bad phone call, and he waited for her to come out of the bathroom and berated her out in the hallway about how she can't cry and be on shift and all this, go home, and only to find out that her boyfriend was critically shot and in critical condition in the ICU. And I said, did you ask why she was crying? And I said, here's what happened. He says, was she lying? I said, dude, that's not how you do this. Well, over the last year, understanding his personality type as a dominant, he doesn't see the emotional aspect of things, or he doesn't deal with emotions at all, and feelings and all of that, just beyond him, the social aspect of things. So teaching him, understanding how he received things, I had to teach him in a way where he understood how other people thought. Total flip a year later, and now he's in this mode of, hey, you're a valuable member of this team here. How are you doing? What's going on? How can I help you? What barriers can I remove for you that can help you get a little bit better? And it is a total. In fact, we were laughing about it. That the change that he's made over this past year, going from go home if you're going to cry to, hey, how you doing? You okay? Anything I can help you with? Total flip. But it's learning that personality profiling, that really does it for you.
Yep, we use a variety, of course, DISC and Core Clarity or Myers-Briggs. There's so many instruments out there today. My undergrad was in psychology, so I had to go through a lot of that.
Right.
But it certainly helps. So what books or seminars are you reading, or let's say in the last year or so, that had an impact? What are you reading or thinking about?
Right
or
now,
hearing?
I'm actually reading. It's by James Greer, I think is his last name. It's called Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
And Atomic Habits. It's phenomenal. One of the things that he talks about in there, when we think of atomic, what do we think of? Big explosion, right?
Right.
And big impact, huge impact, and you got to go big. You got to do all these things. It's not what he talks about. The Atomic Habits is more about getting smaller, attacking the smaller things, and focusing on those things that can eventually, when added with other smaller things, can have a greater impact. And when you start focusing on big picture, then you get bogged down. You get, it's too much to think about. It's too much to handle. I got too much on my plate. No, take one. What's that saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Right.
So that's the premise: is that you take a little bit at a time and have successes in those little bits. eventually this success leads to that success, which leads to that success, and allows you to have a greater impact on your own life, but on those around you as well. Phenomenal book. In fact, I'm going through it, waiting for him to come in, but we're going to go through it as a book club with me
I'm
and
gonna
with some of the writers.
I'm gonna get it and read it. Somebody,
Yeah.
just recently told me about another book, but what you just described is the whole philosophy and methodology that's in our software. Because we know that in sales ops and finance and cash, those are big buckets, but underneath each of those is probably 10 or 15 areas that you could impact, depending on where your barriers are and where you want to grow. So when we're using our software with our consultants can go in and we tell them, you know what, you need to demonstrate to your client. You could pick 30 areas, but don't. Please don't.
Right. Yeah.
Just pick like 7 or 8 of the most impactful, and we have little slider bars. I think you've seen these. So you can slide it and say, hey, I think I could make a 2% impact in cutting costs, or maybe 5. And I tell people, don't ever go above 7. Don't overpromise.
Yeah.
It's better to
Yes.
not. Don't go over 7. But when you do this and put those in, it's like cost cutting. Okay, we could get a 7% reduction in costs, and they go, I don't know how to do that, really. Well, the consultant can go in, and of course the software will lead them through the steps. Have you put your health care out to bid? Have you looked at your fleet insurance? Have you looked at your internet costs? Have you looked at your workman's comp?
Right.
Can you restructure some of your financing on your building or things? Because if you can just get small increments, 2%, 3%, in 8 areas, in a $2 million business, that's going to yield, $300,000, $400,000. And now we tell people, and from consulting, that a lot of times 6 months into the engagement, the consultant blows up, or really 6 weeks sometimes, because the owner's going, why am I writing you? Remember those big checks we used to have to get of $20,000 a week? But they go, why am I paying you? So this keeps the consultant engaged for a minimum of 6 months, but into the whole year, because once you do 6 or 7 and demonstrate the ROI and the result, you can go pick another 6 or 7 and keep that business rolling and keep it moving. And like your I think superpower, Jay, has been the longevity with your clients. How long have you been working with the dentistry group now?
Oh, 4 or 5 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's most consultants don't have that kind of thing. I have the same with an architecture client in Boise, Idaho. And when I got married, when Deb and I were here a few years back, he said, yeah, I booked my ticket. I said, Steve, this is a family wedding. It's like just 34 people in our backyard, And he goes, yeah, I know. I'll be there. Because he considered himself family, So it was a lot of fun.
That's great.
Yeah. Hey, listen. If somebody wants to reach out to you and connect with you, how would they find you? What's the best way out? Do you like LinkedIn, or do you want them to email you, or what's the best way for someone that might want to work with you, or just even pick your brain if they're another consultant? Because I think one of the things that I've learned is a lot of fellow consultants need to talk to other consultants when they get stuck.
Yeah.
And they need somebody that's been down that path before, or has worked in that sector, whether it's manufacturing or it could be in trucking or something, and have somebody that's already walked that path and can kind of help them keep the engagements and keep going. And we certainly share a lot of knowledge, and that's why we put the software out for the price points we did, is to help them go. But if somebody wants to reach out to you with your background, especially if they're working with a dentist, maybe they've never worked in medical before. You have that knowledge. So what's the best way?
So two. One is definitely through email. It's jay@accountability-consulting.com.
Okay.
I always read my emails, always have them, always respond to everybody. So there's not one that's going to have a response. And
you're on LinkedIn too, aren't you, as well?
I'm also on LinkedIn. In fact, I was looking to see what my LinkedIn was.
Your
But
profile, I think your profile also has your email address right in the front page, right where they can
it
find it. So if
does.
they don't
Um,
remember it, they can see it right there on your, about section. So
yeah, so when you
find it.
look, you're looking for Jay Richardson, and I think was linkedin.com/n/j Richardson -0B162518. That's
Okay.
whatever their link is. But yeah, looking
Okay.
for Jay Richardson, you'll see my picture on it. So
Well, Jay, it's been a delight to talk to you today.
always a
You're
pleasure.
so inspiring and makes me want to cement the relationships with my own clients and go out today and help someone. You know, that's
Yeah,
what I'd like to do.
appreciate it.
So thank you so much,
It's
and
always been
let's
a
keep let's
pleasure.
keep.
I think you and I connected very well when we were on a project together, and I've really enjoyed and loved our friendship and our collaboration together. So I appreciate you asking me to come on. It's been a
Yep.
pleasure.
Thanks, Jay. It's a pleasure. We'll see you.
Thanks, Don. All right.
Bye bye.